what's going on? I am on the way to no heat call. Actually, this is a boiler leaking call, guys. This is an existing customer. They don't really have maintenance, but they call us whenever something breaks down. I know this customer has like multiple properties, but with this property, I think we replaced a thermocouple. They have a hot water gas boiler, and I don't think nothing got done here for like the past 3 or 4 years, but the customer, or the landlord, just called us maybe about 30 minutes ago, and he said that the boiler is leaking water, and the tenant tried turning the boiler off and it's still leaking water. I got an idea of what's going on there, but guys, let's go take a look. I'll see y'all when I get there. Looks like we turned the water off. Hold on. This is the hot water to the house. This isn't the feed line. Looks like our leaf has opened up. Hold on, guys. Let me get my notepad. I'll be back. All right, guys. Looks like, what is this, a 12 PSI expansion tank? This relief is definitely shot. You see this right now? I have my fill line on. And this valve is still leaking by. Let me turn this off. Looks like it's going to have to get cut and modified. No ISO valves. Actually, we got one off here that's closed. This is going to save us time with bleeding air. Alright, let me step outside. I'll be back. Alright, guys. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start taking out my expansion tank. But first, I got to take some water down from inside the boiler. Let me get to it. I'll be back. Guys, this expansion tank weighs like 200 pounds here. This tank was definitely full of water. Let me take this thing outside. I'll be back. Alright, guys. Got my relief valve in. Now, I'm going to put my expansion tank on. And most importantly, the piping that came out before was copper. I'm going to use PVC. And this is a very tight space here. I'm just going to put this back with a couple of 3/4 PVC 45s. But most importantly, we're going to have a new tank on. And after I get everything put in, I'm going to definitely do a maintenance on the unit. There's just a bunch of dust here, but from what I can tell, I tested my feeder. I wanted to make sure that I heard water going inside the boiler, and that was the case. I didn't want to add too much water to the boiler because I knew it was going to come back out my relief anyway, but my feeder is still operational. But guys, what I'm going to do, let me put my Teflon tape on the tank and let's connect the piping. I'll be back. Guys, we got the expansion tank in, and most importantly, when you guys are replacing these expansion tanks, you don't want to go too crazy with threads. I typically go 1.25 up to 2 turns past snug. Most importantly, you want to tighten these hand tight. If you use a tool, you can accidentally strip the threads, and now you're gonna turn this into a bigger job than what it needs to be. But always tighten these expansion tanks hand tight. But remember, if you tighten this and it still leaks, you can always tighten it up hand tight a little bit tighter, but you can't do it the other way. If you over tighten it and it leaks and you strip the threads, now you're gonna have to replace fittings, and this is gonna lead to a bigger situation. But I always go up to 2 turns past, like I said, snug, to keep it hand tight, and you should be good to go. Alright, let me get the piping connected. I'll be back. Alright guys, good news is we're up to 15 PSI, no leaks. Bad news is we gotta wait for water to boil. It's gonna take a few minutes for the pipes to heat up, and I may have to bleed the second floor zone. But give me a few minutes, let me clean up a little bit. I'll be back. I got everything running. This is my supply, my return from the second floor. My first floor seems to be getting hot. Good news is we have isolation drain valves. What isolation drain valves are, instead of using a common drain valve on a boiler to bleed both zones, each particular return line has its own separate drain valve. So this makes bleeding air a whole lot easier. Granted, as long as you know which drain valve belongs to which zone. But what I'm gonna do, I gotta use my channel locks. Let me open this up. I'll be back. Guys, and one thing I didn't mention, I didn't tell you the delivery system inside the living space. They have all baseboard with no vents. So that's why you see isolation valves here. If they had radiators with vents, it would have been half the time to do what I'm doing now. But nonetheless, you guys see here, this is why you have to be patient when bleeding air from baseboards, from the boiler. Those air bubbles is not something you're going to see if you don't use the method of what I'm doing now, using the hose of the bucket. If you allow this thing to run, eventually, even if the pipes get hot, this is going to lead to a recall, because air pockets don't always show up in the same particular place. Sometimes if you're not patient with bleeding air, give it some time. Make sure you have nothing but water, no bubbles coming out the bucket. If you try to rush and you just assume just because the pipe is hot, if you still have bubbles coming out the bucket here, that means you still have air in the lines or in the radiators upstairs. So make sure you guys are taking your time and give it about, like I said, at least 45 minutes of constant bleeding. But most importantly, you can see what's coming out the boiler. But I'm gonna give it some time. I gotta keep an eye out, because I may have to dump this bucket soon. But most importantly, no leaks. That's good for me. At least we only have one problem to deal with right now. That's just getting air out. Alright guys, I'll be back. And 40 minutes later, we still got air. And for you guys that didn't know, I mentioned this in previous videos, I got a short hose. It's recommended to use a longer hose. If you can take this outside and just let the water run and overflow the bucket outside, this would be way less to worry about versus doing this inside. So it is what it is with the setup here, guys, but I'm cool with just dumping the bucket out. But ideally, if you guys got a longer boiler hose, preferably at least a 50 footer, you can just take this outside to the nearest window, and most importantly, let the water overflow and make sure you don't see any air bubbles. You see that? This can cause heat not to get to the second floor. Alright guys, let the wait commence. I'll see you in a little bit. Alright guys, it's been almost an hour and now my second floor is finally starting to get hot. The first floor is lukewarm. I'm going to do this one in a second. I gotta wait for my pressure to build back up. But guys, in a perfect world, you're gonna have isolation valves on your supply and your return. Now, regardless of the radiators, knowing that we have a baseboard setup, if we had isolation valves on my supply, if I can send hot water straight to the zone that needs to be bled, that's gonna automatically force the air to come back down to where we need, which will make bleeding a whole lot easier. But the fact that there is no ISO on my supply, and now we're sending water through every single zone, it's going to take a little bit longer for the air to travel back down to the bucket down here at the lower level. But nonetheless, we're at 10 psi. Let me open up this first floor return. I'll be back. Alright guys, one down, one to go. This is my second floor return. Everything is hot. First floor is hot on the supply and lukewarm on the return. I got it set to, I got this at 12 psi. You hear that? That's definitely air inside the boiler. But it's weird, guys. I gotta let the pressure build up a little higher. If I open up the drain now, I don't think it's gonna be enough pressure to force the air out. So I had it up to 12 before. Now I'm gonna get it up to 15. We're almost there. It's not cold, but it's just not hot. It's like lukewarm at best. But give me a minute, guys. We're almost there. This is the fourth quarter. I'll see y'all in a little bit. Alright guys, we filled it back up to 12 psi. Both of my lines are burning hot. But there you have it. Boiler leaking. Found a bad relief valve and an expansion tank full of water. We replaced the tank, replaced the valve, cut out the copper relief line, put a PVC relief line in, so in the future, if the expansion tank has to get replaced, they can just cut the PVC, use a coupling, and bada bing, bada boo. But alright guys, there you have it. I gotta roll to the next call. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.